Welcome to Headline Hunting. I'm your host, Joe Farrar, and joined this week from Las Vegas. He is not traveling around the world. The Globetrotter himself, John Morgan. John, a new UFC heavyweight champion in Fabricio Werdum. And the talk now is this guy the greatest of all time? He's taken out Fedor, he's taken out Big Nog, and now he's taken on Cain Velasquez. What's your take?
It's incredible. I mean, you think he submitted all those guys as well. You know, three of the best to ever play the game in the heavyweight division. But I don't think he's the greatest of all time just yet. I think he's definitely in the conversation. I think, you know, if you're hanging around the water cooler having that talk, I think you got to include him on the list of the greatest ever just because of what he's accomplished. But I want to see a little bit more. I want to see him defend the title a couple times. I think if he comes out and loses it right away in his first title defense, and I think that really puts a dent in the argument. So I think as far as what he's accomplished, naming off those names, that's incredible. And that in itself is worthy of discussion and worthy of consideration, but I don't think he's the greatest of all time just yet. I think I've got to see a little bit of longevity out of him as a champion.
I think that's the talk right there, is everyone sort of has him up there but not solidified, especially because he lost to Junior Dos Santos, who, by the way, tweeted this picture up here that says, hey, I want number 2, I want the rematch, let's do this, I'm coming for your title. Should Junior Dos Santos be the very first challenge for Fabricio Werdum as a new heavyweight champion?
Yeah, I think he should. I think that's the fight to make, and I think you do it in Brazil. I mean, obviously Brazil is a great market for the UFC, but they've been kind of lacking some big fights. They've been talking about doing a stadium show forever, obviously with Anderson Silva on the shelf and the losses and all those things. I mean, you lose some momentum there, but I think that's the type of fight that would be massive in Brazil. So I'd like to see it happen. The other reason I'd like to see it happen, Joe, is because, you know, what happens if you do the rematch, let's say, with Cain Velasquez, and Cain wins? And now you're right back in that same position with Junior Dos Santos, where we know he's one of the best in the heavyweight division, but because of the losses to Cain Velasquez, he was kind of sitting on the shelf and we couldn't do anything with him. So for me, I think you do the Junior Dos Santos fight right away because you don't know what's going to happen in the future, and I think now is the right time to do it. Certainly a lot of other contenders in the division. You know, Andre Arlovski is in the mix. He seems to be a popular choice. We ran a poll on MMA Junkie, and a lot of people were voting for Andre Arlovski, so he seems to be a popular decision. Cain's certainly worthy of a rematch at some point, I would think. But I think you go with Junior Dos Santos right now simply because if Cain gets back into power, you're right back in the same position. Now you can use Junior as a contender.
Absolutely. And speaking of championship fights, there's one that is exclusive for the very first time on UFC Fight Pass, as Joanna Jędrzejczyk basically puts her title on the line against Jessica Penne. But there's always that concern is, who is really going to watch this? Maybe there are some numbers behind UFC Fight Pass that says, you know what, the UFC is making the right call here. But are they?
I think so. I mean, you know, you look at the struggles they've had getting ratings with like Demetrius Johnson in the men's flyweight division. I mean, this is a very new division. I don't know that this would be a big Fox headliner or a Fox Sports 1 headliner. And doing it on Fight Pass means that you get to do the title fight in Europe, which obviously Europe is always screaming and clamoring for the biggest fights. And listen, Fight Pass is trying to add value. I mean, I think it's a good deal at $10 a month. You know, they just added Titan as well. They started doing Shoot do Brazil, so more live events on there, which I think is, you know, the library is cool and it's great for journalists like us to do research. But as far as, you know, fans, I think you want to see live fights. So I think this is the right call. You know, I don't think this would have been a big ratings get for them anyway. So put some live fights on Fight Pass and get people to tune in and pay their $10 a month. So I think it's a good call.
And speaking of the right call, the good call, Trevor Whitman did stop the fight with Nate Marquardt. He was in his corner versus Kelvin Gastelum, but Nate Marquardt needs to make a decision here. He hasn't officially done it, but is it time for the former King of Pancrase, the former UFC middleweight contender, the former Strikeforce welterweight champion to finally call it a career? I say yes, John.
You know, I'd say at least he better be considering it. He better be thinking about it. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's not my job to tell a fighter when they should quit. But, you know, the only reason I would say no, Joe, and right away after the fight, that was one of my gut feelings. So I think that might have been the last time we saw Nate Marquardt fight right there. He just was kind of a broken man, to be honest with you. But then he put that statement on his website and talked a lot about the sicknesses he was dealing with. You know, altitude obviously played a factor. We saw what a factor it played with other people as well. So I guess maybe I'm willing to give him one extra chance. But I think he definitely needs to consider it. I mean, certainly the guy has accomplished a lot of great things during his time in mixed martial arts. But if he has another performance like that and it's at sea level, you just can't have all these circumstances and things to point to. At that point, it becomes excuses. So I'm willing to give him one more chance simply because the explanation he offered does kind of make some sense to me. But I think if he has another performance like that, then yeah, he needs to strongly consider the quality of his life in the future over continuing to fight.
Yeah, I think I may be speaking from my heart, not my head, because Nate Marquardt has been one of the nicest guys to me over my career. He's just such a nice guy. I don't want to see him getting hurt anymore, but it is what it is. And now finally, unfinished business. Kimbo Slice versus Ken Shamrock. Our very own Ben Folks basically said that it's like eating Captain Crunch for dinner. You shouldn't do it all the time, but every so often it's okay. Listen, I want to see this fight. I don't mind watching it. I know they're up there in age, but I want to see this fight.
Hey, you know what? What a fantastic way. Ben's got a great way with words, and I agree, man. It's just so bizarre that I'm even saying. I mean, this is a freak show fight. There's just no other way to say it. But yeah, I think it's going to get great numbers, including me. I mean, I'll be tuning in. I definitely want to see this fight, which is so weird to say. I don't understand why I want to see it, but I do. I guess it's just, the train wreck thing. You can't turn away. So listen, it is. It's not something I want to see these guys matched up all the time. I will say, Ken Shamrock said one time to me, and I'll never forget this. He said, "Listen, I know that people say that I shouldn't be fighting anymore, but said, listen, if you still have that desire and that will to compete, and looking at the pictures and the type of shape he's in, it's obviously he's putting in the work. But if you have the desire and the will to compete, and you can pass the medicals, a doctor will say, yes, this man is fit to fight, then who are you to stop me from doing something I love?" And you know what, man? I can't argue with that attitude. So, yeah, I'll be tuned in. I think this is a bizarre freak show, and I can't believe I'm saying it. But, yeah, I'll be tuned in on Friday night.
For sure, John. Listen, thank you very much for your time. I know you're in Vegas. You finally got some family time, but lots of work still to be done. Thanks again.
Thank you, brother.